Right, so continuing on with mutations, what could cause mutations? We've talked about this question before, so this one should hopefully be a pretty easy one to answer. So what kinds of things can cause mutations? And again, think about it as what kinds of things do you know can cause things like cancer, right? Because that's the one that we most commonly think of when we think about this. And probably your answer has something along the lines of what we've got here. So things like radiation, whether it's X-ray radiation or UV radiation from sunlight. You've got things like chemicals like cigarettes, but also other chemicals that we're exposed to, so things like pesticides and so forth. And then you may have also said something we talked about in a previous chapter, which would be things like cell division gone wrong, right? So there's lots of things that can cause these mutations. Well, we talked now about how we read the genes and how a mutation can change a gene. So let's take a look at how that broken gene can cause illness, right? So the example that I want to look at is the response to alcohol. So people respond very differently to alcohol. You've probably noticed that. And there's actually a illness related to this. There are some people who have a very, very different response to alcohol. And it can be due to a single difference in one base pair in the DNA coding for an enzyme. Okay? So faulty genes or broken genes can code for faulty or broken enzymes. So let's take a look at this insofar as talking about alcohol. So this, there we go. That's probably the best one. This is called the fast flush response. And individuals who have these faulty genes related to the fast flush response are people who will have just maybe one drink, like a glass of wine, maybe a beer, a small shot of spirits, and then suddenly they go from being normal to what we call this fast flush. They turn red, they start to feel ill, and it's basically they feel really not well very quickly. And this is because of a faulty gene. Okay? What's happened is in individuals who have this fast flush response or fast flush reaction, they have a non-functioning enzyme. So their functioning enzyme should look like this guy right here with this bubble shape in it. But because of a one base pair change, so there's one ATCG set that's been swapped out, they end up with a broken enzyme where the active site is shaped wrong. Because it's shaped wrong, the alcohol, the ethanol molecule, can't fit into that enzyme, and it's not going to get broken down. The thing is that that is going to allow those ethanol molecules to accumulate, and that's what creates the fast flush. It's a response of their body saying, hey, something's really wrong, because in high enough concentrations, ethanol is, as you can see down here, toxic. And in high enough concentrations, it can kill us. You've probably heard of things like alcohol poisoning with people. So this is a warning system for people that their bodies are like, hey, this is bad. Something's gone wrong. Our bodies can eliminate ethanol, however, without the enzyme. However, it takes time. And so this is going to make them feel ill. If they continue to drink, it can kill them. Usually they figure out what's going on and they stop drinking. But it, is something that they have to be aware of. And so people who have that fast flush reaction generally don't drink or don't drink a lot because it doesn't make them feel very good. Then you've also got other conditions where the same sort of thing happens. We talked earlier in chapter 4 about Tay-Sachs with lysosomes, where the same sort of thing can happen, where you can have a broken enzyme that allows these materials to build up over time and cause, in that case, definitely death, right? So how do we go from a mutation to illness or death? Well, it just takes 4 steps. The first one is that you get a mutated gene that's coding for a non-functioning protein. Usually it's an enzyme, because enzymes are used to do what? So what are enzymes going to be doing in a cell? They're going to be breaking stuff down or putting stuff together, right? And in this case, most of these illnesses are tied to enzymes that are breaking things apart, okay? So the first thing is you're going to have a mutated gene. Then that mutated gene is read and you get the non-functioning enzyme. That non-functioning enzyme can't catalyze its reaction. It can't make the reaction happen like it normally would. So it's going to stop what's normally going to happen for that reaction. For example, with fast flush, that broken non-functioning enzyme isn't going to be able to break down ethanol, right? So eventually, what's going to happen? The molecule that enzyme is going to react with is going to accumulate, right? It's going to start to collect. Kind of like you see here, a blocked assembly line, right? Things are going to start to back up. And so if the individual continues to drink, in the fast flush example, continues to drink that alcohol continues to build up and collect in their cells because there's nobody there to tear it apart into not as harmful material. And because you get that accumulating chemical, that chemical is building up, that chemical can then can cause sickness and or death. The thing is that in humans and actually in all organisms, pretty much if you get high enough concentrations of any material, it becomes toxic, right? And so that is why these sorts of mutations can be so dangerous. We even have, and I think I may have, I'm pretty sure I have this in another lecture, we have an amino acid, phenylalanine, that we use. But if we consume certain things in our diet, we get a higher amount of it in our system than we need. We normally have an enzyme to break it and convert it into another amino acid. However, if your enzyme is broken, you can't convert it, and you need to limit the amount of phenylalanine that you're consuming because it can actually lead to illness and, in that case, death. Today in the United States, babies are actually tested for this. It's called PKU for that one with phenylalanine, because once you know you have it, you just have to avoid certain things like diet soda because they have high amounts of that phenylalanine. We're going to finish off this section with another question. So a mutation occurs in the blank of a gene, but the disease that is caused by the translation of a what? So the mutation occurs in the blank of a gene, but the disease is caused by translation of a what? And in this case, it is D. So the mutation occurs in the DNA, so it's going to change the actual directions in the gene. But the disease itself is caused by the translation of that non-functional, that broken protein, right? The protein is going to be broken because most of them are going to be those broken enzymes.